In 1914, a wooden ship sailed into the most dangerous ocean on Earth. Not a warship, not a rescue ship, just a small expedition vessel with a crew of 28 men. Their mission sounded impossible. They wanted to cross the entire continent of Antarctica, on foot. At that time, Antarctica was the most mysterious place on Earth. No satellite maps, no weather prediction, just endless ice. And one man believed it could be conquered. His name was Ernest Shackleton. He was fearless, charismatic, and completely obsessed with exploration. But Shackleton's dream would soon turn into something far worse than failure. Because only a few months after leaving civilization, their ship became trapped. Not by enemies, not by storms, but by something much more powerful: ice. Miles and miles of solid Antarctic ice, slowly closing around their ship like a giant frozen trap. At first, the crew believed they could escape. But day after day, week after week, the ice kept tightening, until one terrifying truth became clear. They were completely stuck, and they were now drifting deeper into the frozen wilderness of Antarctica. No rescue, no communication, no way out. Then, one night, something happened. The ice began to move, not slowly, violently. The pressure started crushing the ship, wood snapping, metal bending, the entire vessel groaning under thousands of tons of ice. In that moment, Shackleton realized something horrifying. Their ship was dying, and if the ship died, they would be trapped on drifting ice in the coldest place on Earth, thousands of kilometers from help. What happened next became one of the most unbelievable survival stories in human history, because for the next 2 years, these men would fight against blizzards, starvation, madness, and the endless frozen wilderness of Antarctica. But the most shocking part of this story is that every single man survived. How? That's the story of the Endurance expedition. In the early 1900s, Antarctica was the final frontier of exploration. Humans had climbed mountains, crossed oceans, discovered new continents, but Antarctica remained almost completely unknown. Many explorers tried to conquer it. Most failed. But Ernest Shackleton believed he could achieve something even greater. Not just reaching the South Pole, he wanted to cross the entire continent, nearly 3,000 kilometers of ice. It would be the greatest polar expedition ever attempted. To do this, Shackleton needed a ship, a very strong ship, so he bought a specially designed wooden vessel. It was built to survive crushing sea ice, and he gave it a powerful name: Endurance. Because Shackleton believed survival in Antarctica required only one thing: endurance. He recruited a crew of scientists, sailors, carpenters, photographers, and adventurers. Even the job advertisement he published was unusual. It said, "Men wanted for hazardous journey, small wages, bitter cold, long months of darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful." Thousands still applied, because this wasn't just a job, it was a chance to make history. In August 1914, the Endurance sailed toward Antarctica. The men had no idea they were about to enter a nightmare. At first, everything seemed normal. The crew laughed, played music, took photographs. But the closer they sailed toward Antarctica, the more dangerous the ocean became. Huge icebergs appeared, floating mountains of ice. Then the sea itself began freezing. Thick ice plates surrounded the ship. The Endurance pushed forward, breaking through them slowly. But by January 1915, they reached the Weddell Sea. And this sea had a terrifying reputation. It was known as the most dangerous ice zone in Antarctica. Ships entered, but many never escaped. At first, the ice only slowed them down. Then suddenly, everything stopped. The Endurance was trapped, frozen into the ice. The crew waited patiently. Shackleton believed the ice would melt soon. But days passed, then weeks. The ice didn't melt. Instead, it became thicker. The ship was now completely frozen in place. And slowly, the drifting ice began carrying them deeper into Antarctica. At first, life on the trapped ship wasn't terrible. The crew adapted. They hunted seals, played football on the ice, tried to stay positive. But Antarctica has a way of breaking people. Winter arrived, and with it came something terrifying. Total darkness. For months. The sun disappeared. The temperature dropped below -40 degrees Celsius. The wind screamed across the ice. But the worst threat wasn't the cold. It was the ice itself. Because Antarctic sea ice isn't stable. It moves. And when it moves, it crushes anything trapped inside it. One night, the ice began pushing against the ship. The hull started creaking. The wood bent under enormous pressure. Shackleton watched silently. He knew what was happening. The ice was slowly squeezing the ship, like a giant vice. Day after day, the pressure increased, until finally, the Endurance began to break. October 1915. The ice pressure became unstoppable. The ship's wooden beams snapped. Water flooded inside. The crew desperately tried saving supplies. But Shackleton made a brutal decision. Abandon ship. After months trapped inside their floating home, the men stepped onto the ice and watched their ship slowly die. The Endurance tilted sideways. The ice crushed its hull. Then one final crack echoed across the frozen sea, and the ship sank beneath the ice. Now the men were alone, standing on drifting ice in the middle of Antarctica. No ship, no rescue, just white emptiness in every direction. Shackleton gathered the crew and said something simple. Ship and stores have gone. Now we go home. But going home would be almost impossible. For months, the men camped on floating ice. The ice itself drifted across the ocean. Sometimes it broke apart suddenly. Sometimes it cracked beneath their feet. They hunted penguins and seals to survive. Every day they asked the same question. Would the ice carry them closer to land or farther away? Food supplies began running out. The cold exhausted them. But Shackleton kept morale alive. He played games, told stories, made sure no one lost hope. Finally, after months drifting, land appeared on the horizon, a small rocky island. It was called Elephant Island, but reaching it would require crossing the most violent ocean on Earth, in tiny lifeboats. The crew launched their lifeboats into the freezing sea. Gigantic waves smashed the boats. Freezing water soaked the men constantly. After 7 days of nightmare sailing, they reached Elephant Island. But there was a new problem. No ships ever passed this island. If they stayed there, they would die. So Shackleton planned something unbelievable. He would take 5 men and sail a small lifeboat across 1,300 kilometers of the most dangerous ocean in the world. Their destination? South Georgia Island, where a whaling station might save them. The journey would take weeks, through hurricane winds, freezing waves, and almost certain death. Against all odds, Shackleton's boat reached South Georgia Island. But the landing point was on the wrong side of the island. A massive mountain range blocked the whaling station. No human had ever crossed those mountains. But Shackleton and 2 men attempted it anyway. They climbed icy peaks, crossed glaciers, and after 36 hours without sleep, they finally reached civilization. Rescue ships were sent, and months later, every single man stranded on Elephant Island was saved. Not one died. This story isn't just about survival. It's about leadership, courage, and the unbelievable strength of human determination. Because in the most brutal environment on Earth, when everything was lost, one man refused to give up. And because of that, 27 others lived to tell the story. The Endurance expedition remains one of the greatest survival stories in history, not because they conquered Antarctica, but because they survived it.